Hey up and welcome back to the channel. Now today something a little bit different. This video isn't about my old BMW 1200 GS Adventure, and it's not about my new Honda VFR 1200X Cross Tourer. It's about another adventure bike that I had a couple of years ago throughout that long hot summer of 2018, which seems from another era now given recent events. But if I cast my mind back to then, I had that bike for about 6 months all told, and I eventually sold it. And I didn't sell it because I was particularly dissatisfied with the bike in and of itself. I actually sold it because of the number of faults that it developed over a short period of time, and on the back of that the standard of service from the local KTM dealer. Now, when I bought that bike, it had just under 10,000 miles on the clock and just under 12 months left on the manufacturer's warranty. And I'd had the bike about probably 3 weeks when I went to fire it up in the garage, and the race on switch that brings the bike to life basically would not activate anything at all. The bike was completely dead. I checked the batteries in the key fob because it's a keyless bike, and they were fine. I pushed the key fob up against the transponder sight on the left hand side of the fairing, and again nothing would come to life whatsoever. So that resulted in calling KTM Recovery, which resulted in the RAC arriving at my home to take the bike to the local KTM dealership, where it stayed for a week. And the diagnosis was that the race on button had died. Whether through some form of defect in manufacturing, whether because it's a faulty part, or whether because it had been exposed to weather and had not survived that exposure, was never really clear. Anyway, it was replaced under warranty, so I just put it down to one of those unfortunate mishaps that you get from time to time with a bike that's new to you. And I put to the back of my mind all the long-standing jokes and what I consider to be urban myths about KTM reliability, because any bike can break down at any time, and after all, why should KTMs be any different to any other motorcycle? So I didn't accept at that point that there were reputational issues with the reliability of KTMs in general. As I say, I thought it was just an urban myth. And so fast forward then no more than a couple of weeks, and I found myself out and about, riding around North Yorkshire, and suddenly I wasn't able to select a gear. And the bike didn't seem to know whether it was in gear, in false neutral, out of gear, or what. And after a lot of frustrating manoeuvring of the gear lever, I eventually managed to get the bike to select third gear, and I limped the bike home for about 30 miles purely in third gear, and there were a lot of hills on that return journey as well. So that was testament certainly to the power of that LC8 engine, that 160 horsepower V-twin engine in the KTM. As a result, I was again obliged to call KTM Recovery, and again the RAC came up with a flatbed and recovered the bike back to the local dealership some 25 miles away, where it spent another week, and it had transpired that the gear lever had come away from the connecting shaft into the gearbox, and the technician basically said that I was very lucky, because if it had been the gearbox there'd have been massive warranty issues, which rather confused me because the bike was well inside its warranty, and if there had been a gearbox failure then surely there wouldn't have been any issue of contention around that warranty. So it was a strange reply And it rather reminded me of the reply a couple of weeks earlier when the race on key had failed and needed replacing, because the same technician said to me, it's a good job it's not the main computer unit in the bike, because if that had have gone, there'd have been a major warranty issue. So by now I was starting to get a little bit concerned, but the explanation for the mechanical defect with the gear lever was that KTM, when they put the bike together in the factory in Austria, had not used any thread lock on the bolt that holds the gear lever to the gearbox shaft, which smacks of very poor build quality and very poor quality of control. If that's true. As I say, it was a KTM technician that mentioned this. Fast forward another week now, and I took the bike to work, and at the end of work, it was a Friday, I was keen to get back home quite quickly. Went to fire the bike up, and again the race on key would not come to life, and no amount of putting the key fob near to the transponder side on the left hand side of the fairing would bring the bike back to life. In addition to that, the electronic steering lock was on, and what that meant was that not only would the bike not come to life, but I wasn't even able to freewheel the bike or push the bike into the garage at work to keep the bike safe until I could arrange some form of remedial action. So at that point I became really frustrated. Now, by some miracle, after about an hour of messing about and having already contacted recovery, I eventually got the bike to fire up and the steering lock to release. I don't know how, I don't know what I did, but it did eventually, after God knows how many attempts, come back to life. So I was able to cancel recovery and get the bike back home. A couple of weeks after that, maybe not even a couple of weeks after that, again I had exactly the same issue in the garage at home with the electronic steering lock. It would not release for love nor money, and that same situation happened 2 or 3 times after that. So by now I was in a situation where there'd been so many faults in such a short time, and so many almost apocalyptic one-liners from the dealership about KTM build quality and the extent of its warranty, that I thought long and hard about how much confidence I would have on this bike touring any distance from home, and touring is what I enjoy doing. And when you're out on tour, the very last thing you want on any bike is the thought that the next morning that the bike will let you down, and that you won't be able to continue your journey, and that you're going to have to be recovered. That is a nightmare scenario for any touring motorcyclist. It's worth mentioning at this point, as far as I'm concerned, that bike was fantastic. I invested a lot of money in aftermarket accessories, from crash bars to aftermarket screen, endless list of the desirable accessories that you always, or I would always put on a bike to make it as customized as possible. So in terms of investment in the bike, I'd put a lot of money in, easily £1,000. So I had some long, hard, introspective decision making to undertake, and I finally came to the conclusion that although I love the bike to bits, that as an adventure bike, when she's up and running, I think that bike is absolutely unrivaled across the spectrum of BMW and Triumph and Ducati and you name it. it just knocks the pants off everything in terms of performance and looks. It's got very quirky looks indeed. Mine was the 2017 model, so the revamped model of the Super Adventure, and I was really taken by the looks, and still am taken by the looks of that bike. So it was with a heavy heart that bike was eventually sold. So the question now is, would I buy another one? And the answer to that question is yes, I would, but certain fears and reservations would have to be allayed at a very early stage. Now, first things to say is there's no way that I would ever be parting company with my Honda Cross Tourer VFR 1200X. That's a superb bike. It's got bags of everything that I need, and it has that added element of a fantastic reputation for build quality and reliability. So that bike's a keeper. But there'll come a point when the old GS has to move on, and I'm looking at a second adventure bike. And I would be very tempted by the KTM Super Adventure S again, and this would be a classic case of heart overruling head. And when I referred earlier to this urban myth surrounding KTMs, when I actually looked further into these reputational aspects, it started to occur to me that perhaps it wasn't an urban myth, because I was seeing so many similar examples on forums and on Facebook pages and amongst YouTube vloggers about the reliability of the bike, number one, and number two, the quality of the after-sales service. And with that amount of negative comment floating around in the ether, I'm astonished that KTM haven't got some traction on this, and certainly made some progress with after purchase quality of service. As for reliability, there's a new KTM 1290 Super Adventure S on the horizon. There are no end of spy shots of this bike if you look in MCN and online. But what I would want to see before I invested in another bike, either new or used, would be some acknowledgement by KTM that there are issues with the suite of electronics on that bike, and that some very effective remedial steps have been taken to put them right, because it's an absolute crying shame with a bike of that standard and stature and performance and capability that the one underlying characteristic everybody requires of a motorcycle, reliability, seems to be under a cloak of suspicion constantly. And you can see that even today, looking at up-to-date reviews of brand new 2020 KTMs. If you look on YouTube, I've seen 2 or 3 from established vloggers who've been loaned press bikes, KTM Super Duke Rs, Super Duke GTs. I know one vlogger who long term had a KTM 1290 Super Adventure S like mine and has sold that bike for exactly the same reasons that outlining now, where issues have continued to present themselves. So this is a bit of an appeal really. KTM, for goodness sake, it's one issue, not a host of issues, but it is an absolutely critical issue. So please, 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 can you sort out the reliability of your bike's electronics? Because I would have one of these again in a breath. I would have a KTM 1290 Super Adventure S tomorrow. I'd probably have a black and orange one this time rather than a white and orange one. But it wouldn't matter what colour it was, how good it looked, and how much my heart embraced it, if it didn't have that issue of reliability and the confidence that comes with knowing that a bike's going to fire up when you're 200 miles from home. So there, just a bit of a slightly different video today, a historical reflection, if you like, upon a bike that I did enjoy when it was working properly a couple of years ago, and I'd love to have again, but KTM are going to need to get their act together as far as I'm concerned. So hope that's been of some interest. Thanks for watching. 1,000 indeed a million thanks to all those people who've subscribed. If you like what you see on this channel, please click a like. If you don't like what you see, please click a dislike, but at least tell me what it is that you don't like. And apart from that, and until the next time, ride safe, and above all, be kind.